On the night of December 24, 2022, Elle Edwards, a 26-year-old beautician from Wirral, England, lost her life in a tragic, senseless act of violence. Elle, known for her warm heart and infectious personality, had been enjoying a festive evening at the Lighthouse Inn in Wallasey Village with friends, celebrating Christmas Eve. What should have been a night of joy quickly turned into a nightmare as gunshots rang out in the pub's parking lot. At approximately 11:50 p.m., a brutal shooting took place. The intended target was Jake Duffy, a 24-year-old man from Beechwood. Duffy, who had ties to the local criminal underworld, was known for his association with a violent gang. Connor Chapman, a notorious drug dealer and rival to the Beechwood gang, had been involved in an ongoing turf war over control of the drug trade in the area. On that night, Chapman aimed to eliminate Duffy, seeing him as a threat to his illegal operations. However, in a devastating twist of fate, the gunfire intended for Jake Duffy did not hit its mark. Instead, it struck Elle Edwards, an innocent bystander with no connection to the violence surrounding the shooting. She was hit by a bullet while she was standing outside the pub, unaware of the danger unfolding just a few feet away. Despite the best efforts of emergency responders, Elle was tragically pronounced dead at the scene. Her death, a result of a targeted gang attack, sent shockwaves throughout her community, with people reeling in disbelief that a young woman with so much potential had been taken away in such a violent manner. The shooting that claimed Elle Edwards' life was deeply connected to the violent gang conflict between two factions: the Beechwood gang, with which Jake Duffy was associated, and Connor Chapman's gang, which was involved in the distribution and trafficking of drugs across Wirral and Liverpool. The Beechwood gang, based in the Beechwood area of Wirral, had long established itself as a dominant force in the region's illicit drug market. The gang was involved in everything from street-level drug dealing to more sophisticated operations, and they used violence to maintain control over their territories. Jake Duffy, with his hardened connections and role within the Beechwood gang, had become one of the enforcers for the group. He had earned a reputation for his involvement in violent activities and had become a target of rival factions seeking to undermine the Beechwood gang's power. On the other side was Connor Chapman, a 23-year-old drug dealer who had built his own criminal empire. Chapman was known for his ruthless tactics and his determination to expand his drug network. Over the years, Chapman's operations had come into direct conflict with the Beechwood gang, particularly over control of local drug routes. This rivalry had become increasingly violent, with multiple incidents of retaliation and threats. The tensions between the two groups had escalated over time, with each gang attempting to assert dominance. The shooting outside the Lighthouse Inn was the culmination of this ongoing conflict, where Chapman sought to take out one of the Beechwood gang's key players, Jake Duffy. However, in the chaotic exchange of gunfire, Elle, an innocent young woman who had nothing to do with the gangs or their criminal activities, became the tragic collateral damage. Connor Chapman, the 23-year-old drug dealer from Wirral, was the man responsible for firing the fatal shots. Chapman was no stranger to the criminal justice system and was already known to law enforcement for his involvement in drug trafficking and other violent crimes. His desire to expand his influence in the local drug trade had led to violent confrontations with rival gangs, and he had a particular disdain for Jake Duffy and the Beechwood gang. Chapman had a well-established reputation for his violent behavior, using fear and intimidation as tools to maintain control over his business. His decision to target Duffy was rooted in a desire to eliminate a key figure in the Beechwood gang, and thus diminish the gang's power in the area. Chapman was aware that Duffy's influence was substantial, and his removal would provide an opening for Chapman to expand his territory. Jake Duffy, on the other hand, was deeply embedded within the Beechwood gang. A 24-year-old man from Beechwood, Duffy had been involved in the criminal world for years and had a history of violent offenses, including drug-related crimes. Duffy's role within the Beechwood gang had made him a key player in the local drug scene, and he had become a target for Chapman and other rival factions. The gang conflict was not just a simple rivalry, it was a life-and-death struggle for control over a lucrative, illegal market. Both Chapman and Duffy were willing to resort to extreme violence to defend their positions, with little regard for the consequences on the lives of innocent people. The night of the shooting, Chapman arrived at the Lighthouse Inn armed with a gun, intending to eliminate Duffy. However, despite his best efforts to kill Duffy, the gunfire missed its intended target. Instead, the bullet struck Elle Edwards, who was standing outside with friends. The tragedy marked the senseless loss of a life that had no place in the violent world of gang warfare. Following Ella's tragic death, Merseyside police launched a full-scale investigation to find those responsible for the shooting. Detectives quickly established that the violence had been gang-related, specifically tied to the ongoing rivalry between the Beechwood gang and Chapman's drug network. They worked tirelessly to uncover the events leading up to the shooting and identify the perpetrators. The investigation revealed that Connor Chapman had been actively targeting Jake Duffy as part of his campaign to eliminate rival gang members. Surveillance footage from the pub and witness testimonies helped police to piece together the events of that fateful night. Witnesses described Chapman's actions and the chaotic scene that unfolded as he opened fire on Duffy. But despite the violence, Duffy managed to escape the scene unscathed. Tragically, Ella, who was outside the pub enjoying the evening with friends, was caught in the crossfire and was fatally shot. Police tracked down Chapman and arrested him in the days following the incident. During his interrogation, he denied any involvement in the shooting, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The gun used in the shooting was traced back to him, and multiple witnesses identified him as the shooter. Connor Chapman was charged with murder, attempted murder, and multiple firearms offenses. The trial of Connor Chapman was a long-awaited moment of justice for Ella's family and the local community. In court, the prosecution presented a clear case showing that Chapman had deliberately targeted Jake Duffy, intending to kill him. However, the stray bullets that Chapman fired that night killed Ella instead, an innocent woman with no ties to the criminal world. The tragic irony of the situation was not lost on those who knew Ella, and the courtroom was filled with sorrow as the full scale of the tragedy unfolded. Connor Chapman was found guilty of murder and multiple charges related to the shooting. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 40 years before he could be considered for parole. The conviction brought a sense of justice, but it could never fill the void left by Ella's untimely death. Her family, devastated by the loss, found some solace in knowing that the man responsible for taking her life would face consequences, but their grief remained profound. Elle Edwards' death was a turning point for the local community. Her tragic fate highlighted the deep-rooted issues of gang violence and the far-reaching impact of the criminal drug trade. Local residents were shaken by the brutality of the crime, and people came together to mourn her loss, holding vigils and memorials in her honor. In the wake of the shooting, there were widespread calls for action from both law enforcement and local government officials. The community demanded stronger measures to combat gang violence and prevent young people from being drawn into the world of crime. There were calls for better support systems, more educational opportunities, and initiatives to help young people avoid the lure of gangs and the dangerous world of drug dealing. Ella's family, heartbroken by their loss, also became vocal advocates for change. They worked with local organizations to raise awareness about the dangers of gang violence and to encourage others to take a stand against the criminal activity that had taken their loved one's life. Their efforts focused on ensuring that future generations would not have to face the same kind of tragedy. Elle Edwards' life was cut short in a violent act of gang-related revenge that had nothing to do with her. Her death serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of gang violence and the deadly impact of the drug trade on communities. While justice has been served with the conviction of Connor Chapman, the pain of losing Ella remains with her family, friends, and the entire Wallasey community. Her story is one of many, but it is a story that must be remembered. The tragic loss of Ella Edwards is a call to action to confront gang violence, to protect innocent lives, and to work towards a society where young people are given opportunities for a better future, free from the lure of criminal activity. Ella Edwards' memory lives on as a symbol of the need for change, and a reminder that no life should be lost to senseless violence.
Police were called to a property in Ashland Close just before 7 p.m. last night. Officers attended alongside colleagues from the East of England Ambulance Service and, on arrival, found 3 women with serious injuries.
Well, the evidence really against Kyle Clifford was overwhelming. He had previously admitted to all the charges against him, and that was the murder of his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt, the murder of her sister Hannah Hunt, and the murder of their mother Carol Hunt.
In the Irish Hennessy, Carlingford locked, and AP McCoy, get up! Of course he did! Carlingford Lock beats Foxrock. Lord Windermere, the Gold Cup winner, back in 3rd place, but he ran a tremendous Cheltenham trial.
The Hunt family was well known in broadcasting circles. John Hunt, a respected TV racing commentator, was celebrated for his insightful commentary and warm personality. His family, his wife Carol, aged 61, and their 2 daughters Louise, 25, and Hannah, 28, were the heart of his world. Carol was known for her kindness and grace, while Louise and Hannah, though young, had already begun to make their mark in their own ways. Their life together appeared peaceful and full of promise, with the family often seen sharing smiles and laughter at public events and on television interviews. However, beneath the public smiles lay private challenges. As in many families, there were struggles and unspoken tensions that were kept away from the spotlight. But nothing could have prepared them for the darkness that was about to descend upon their lives. On a cold evening that would forever scar the memories of those who knew the Hunts, tragedy struck. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unimaginable act unfolded, a crime so brutal it would rock the nation. That night, Kyle Clifford, a man whose past was marked by violent behavior and disturbing obsessions, carried out an attack that would leave the Hunt family shattered. According to evidence later presented in court, Clifford targeted the Hunt residence with chilling precision. It began with an unannounced intrusion, and within moments, the home that once radiated warmth turned into a scene of horror. Carol Hunt was found brutally murdered in her own living room, her life extinguished in an act of savagery that defied comprehension. Shortly after, the bodies of Louise and Hannah, who had returned home from an evening out, were discovered. The sisters, full of promise and dreams, had been taken from their family in an act of pure, unrelenting violence. When the first calls came into the police station reporting a disturbance at the Hunt residence, investigators arrived to a scene of chaos. The blood-stained floors, shattered glass, and the overwhelming silence in the aftermath of violence told a story of brutality. Emergency services worked feverishly to secure the scene, and forensic teams began collecting evidence. Initial examinations suggested that the attack had been meticulously planned. The weapon used, a modified high-powered firearm, had left distinctive marks hinting at the killer's technical expertise. Traces of trace evidence, including fingerprints and DNA samples, were carefully cataloged. Detectives noted that the method of execution was deliberate. The victims were killed swiftly and with a cold precision that left little chance for resistance. In the days following the crime, the investigation deepened. Authorities discovered that Kyle Clifford, a man with a history of violent outbursts and previous run-ins with the law, had been seen in the vicinity of the Hunt residence on the night of the murders. His presence, coupled with prior intelligence about his potential motives, made him an immediate person of interest. Kyle Clifford was not a stranger to controversy. His troubled past had long been a subject of discussion among law enforcement, though many had hoped he would eventually reform. However, his latest actions proved that his inner demons had only grown more violent. Neighbors recalled seeing a quiet, brooding figure lurking near the Hunt home, and anonymous tips soon began to circulate among the investigative teams. Clifford's background revealed a history of isolation, mental health issues, and a growing fixation on retribution. His motives appeared personal, a deep-seated anger that had finally erupted in a moment of unspeakable violence. As detectives pieced together his movements on the night of the crime, a clearer picture emerged of a man who had planned the attack with disturbing detail. Surveillance footage from nearby streets and witness testimonies helped link Clifford to the scene, setting the stage for the case that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Forensic experts played a crucial role in the investigation. The unique characteristics of the weapon used, combined with trace evidence such as fibers and unidentified DNA, began to point unambiguously toward Clifford. Investigators discovered that certain items found at the scene, personal belongings inadvertently left behind, matched those in Clifford's possession. Moreover, digital evidence, including cell phone records and GPS data, placed Clifford within close proximity of the Hunt residence on that fatal night. The mounting physical and circumstantial evidence created a compelling case against him, and the pressure on the investigators intensified. Public outcry grew as news of the gruesome murders spread, demanding swift justice for the Hunt family. After weeks of painstaking work, law enforcement finally obtained enough evidence to move forward with an arrest. On a crisp morning, officers executed a well-coordinated operation at a rundown apartment where Clifford was believed to be hiding. In a tense standoff, Clifford was apprehended without further incident. His calm, almost eerie demeanor during the arrest only added to the chilling narrative surrounding the case. The arrest was met with mixed reactions, relief among the community, and a renewed determination by the police to ensure that justice was served for Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt. The media descended upon the case, and Clifford's name quickly became synonymous with the heinous crime. Kyle Clifford's trial was one of the most anticipated legal proceedings in recent history. The courtroom was packed with members of the public, journalists, and, most poignantly, family members of the victims, all seeking justice. Over the course of the trial, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, meticulous forensic analysis, compelling witness testimonies, and a series of circumstantial clues that painted a damning picture of Clifford's involvement. Under intense cross-examination, Clifford's previously impenetrable facade began to crumble. In a dramatic moment that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, he broke down and confessed to the murders. His confession was both methodical and chilling. He recounted how years of isolation, simmering resentment, and a desire for retribution had led him to commit the unthinkable. Clifford's words revealed a mind deeply scarred by neglect, now twisted into a weapon of terror. Following a grueling trial, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Kyle Clifford was found guilty of the murder of Carol Hunt and her daughters, Louise and Hannah. The sentence that followed was severe: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the Hunt family and the community at large, the verdict was a bittersweet moment of closure after enduring unspeakable loss. The sentencing marked the end of a long and arduous pursuit of justice, but it also served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of violence. As the gavel fell, voices in the courtroom rose in a mix of relief, sorrow, and righteous indignation, a collective outcry that would resonate for years to come. In the months following the trial, the story of the Hunt family's tragedy and Kyle Clifford's conviction dominated headlines. Memorial services were held for Carol, Louise, and Hannah, and public vigils became a common sight as communities sought to heal from the collective trauma. The case spurred significant changes in local law enforcement practices and led to calls for improved support systems for victims of violent crime. For many, the case became a symbol of how a single act of unthinkable violence could shatter a community. The Hunt family, forever marked by their loss, became vocal advocates for victims' rights and reforms in criminal justice. Their courage in the face of unimaginable grief inspired widespread support and sparked debates about how society could better protect vulnerable families from similar fates. Today, the legacy of Kyle Clifford's crimes endures as a somber reminder of the depths to which human cruelty can descend. His actions have left an indelible mark on the national consciousness, a case that not only brought justice for one family, but also served as a catalyst for broader discussions about mental health, social neglect, and the importance of early intervention. In academic circles and media retrospectives, the case is frequently examined as a cautionary tale. Experts point to the interplay between a troubled upbringing, isolation, and the absence of timely support as factors that can culminate in such devastating acts of violence. The story of the Hunt family and Kyle Clifford continues to influence policy debates and community initiatives aimed at preventing future tragedies. The tragedy that befell the Hunt family has led to concrete changes in both local and national policies. Law enforcement agencies have revamped their investigative techniques, and new support networks have been established for families affected by violent crime. Mental health services have also seen increased funding, driven by a renewed commitment to addressing the root causes of criminal behavior. The case has left a legacy that serves as both a memorial to Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt, and a powerful impetus for societal change. Their story remains a haunting chapter in the nation's history, a stark reminder that behind every headline lies a human tragedy, and that collective action is essential to ensure such darkness is not allowed to take root again.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
No comment.
Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up Louise?
No comment.
From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes?
No comment.
It's evident quite clearly from your purchase of the crossbow, from your purchase of the additional bolts, from the purchase of the gun and the knife in the 2 weeks leading up to the murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
Do you agree that it shows that you only had one thing in mind, and that planning began when you purchased these items? You purchased rope and you purchased duct tape in order to restrain Louise and Hannah and Carol, didn't you?
No comment.
5-6 days before this happened, you make these significant purchases that really only have one plausible explanation, didn't you?
No comment.
The only plausible explanation is that they were purchased in order for you to carry out these murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
You got to the address and you came well prepared. You came prepared with Louise's belongings, didn't you?
No comment.
Louise's belongings were your ticket into that address. Yes?
No comment.
You deceived your way into that address at the front door with Carol, pretending that you were having a civil and friendly conversation and returning Louise's property, and you'd even written out a thank you card. Yes?
No comment.
Next thing I'd like to speak to you about, Kyle, is some more information, some more evidence that we've obtained from the download of your mobile phone. So on the mobile phone, in the notes section, there is a note which is titled Last Letter, and it's written to different family members as individual paragraphs addressed to each individual family member. This item was created on the 26th of June, and the last modification was on the 7th of July. The opening part of the note reads as such: Please don't think of this as me throwing my life away. I have lived, and I am grateful for everything and everyone that has been a part of it. It is now my time to leave and be at peace, as this is what I ultimately want. I know you will all have so many questions and wish you could have done something different to prevent this. However, none of you have failed, and there is simply nothing any of you could have done. This is my decision to just be at peace. You all have to take care of each other and speak to each other, as that will be the best thing for you all. I love you all so much. You okay, Carl, to carry on? When you wrote that note, had you already planned the murders of Louise, Carol and Hannah? So I'm interested in the words prevent this. So tell me what you mean by prevent this. Do you mean the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise? The next note is addressed to myself. I don't want to live my life without her. I don't want to experience new things. Nothing I can think of can make me happy. I know I could have gone to therapy, found faith, and become a new, better person, but I just simply don't want to. I'm so sorry I didn't wait to move on and find my future wife, have the children I always wanted. What do you mean by that?
No comment.
Explain to me why you decided to deprive Hannah and Louise of that privilege.
No comment.
What gave you the right to do that?
No comment.
What gave you the right to deprive Carol of seeing her future grandchildren?
No comment.
It's a very self-centred note and doesn't take into account anybody else. Do you agree with that?
No comment.
There's no apology to the Hunt family, is there?
No comment.
The only apology is to yourself. Do you feel that these are quite self-centred words?
No comment.
Why didn't you seek help, Kyle?
No comment.
You couldn't be bothered, is what the letter suggests. Am I wrong?
No comment.
You don't want to live your life without her. Explain that.
No comment.
But of course, you sit here in front of us and she's dead. Tell me how this has happened.
No comment.
Is your intention to make people feel sorry for you writing these letters?
No comment.
Look at your behaviour. Look how calmly and nonchalantly you walk away from that house. You've just killed 3 people and you stroll away like you're going down the shops. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a loss of control. You didn't go to the address and all of a sudden form this intent to kill Carol, kill Louise, kill Hannah. You'd gone there with that sole intention in mind. You went there. The CCTV footage shows throughout that you are cool, you are calm, you're collected, you're considered. There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill almost an entire family. I'm right in what I'm saying, aren't I, Kyle?
No comment.
Please correct me if I am completely wrong.
Murderous attack on her and her family. You first killed her mother, Carol, who even on that day showed you nothing but kindness moments before you attacked her. You raped and killed Louise, who had been as gentle as she could in ending her relationship with you after your arrogance and anger proved too much for her to stand. Then you murdered Hannah Hunt, who had done nothing to harm you save supporting her little sister. The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released. Your brutal and cowardly attack had been planned over about 11 days. You conducted extensive research into the movements of Louise's father John, into her mother's Facebook page, into buying a crossbow, a knife and an air pistol, and even into the weather on the day of the attack. You bought rope, duct tape, petrol cans, the knife you used in the attack, and a crossbow. You wrote letters to your family dripping with self-pity. On the day of the attack, you first parked well away from the Hunt family home to check if Louise's father was there. Researching his work when you saw his car was indeed outside the house. You approached a second time with a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card to Carol and John Hunt, obviously part of a plan to trick Mrs. Hunt into letting you in the house. You first talked to Carol Hunt on the doorstep and persuaded her to admit you. She spoke kindly to you, but you then attacked her, stabbing her to death within moments of entering. You then left the house to collect the crossbow. Louise Hunt had been working in a building in the garden of the house. When she came in, you restrained her with duct tape round her wrists and ankles and gagged her. You kept her there alive for over 2.5 hours. She must have come to realise you'd already killed her mother. During that time, you raped her. Then you murdered her by shooting her with the crossbow as her sister Hannah was about to enter the house. Hannah Hunt was in a rush. She saw you and realised something was very wrong. You then shot her with the crossbow, causing an injury she could never hope to survive, but she remained alive long enough to see the unspeakable violence you had already inflicted on her mother and her sister. Hannah was able to call for help, but when the emergency services arrived, they could not save her. You had fled. You were arrested the next day, whereupon you made a last-minute attempt to kill yourself. I have heard John Hunt, Amy Hunt and Alex Klein speak of their dreadful loss. They were difficult to listen to, given the devastation and heartbreak they recounted. They spoke of Carol, Louise and Hannah as bringing joy, colour and happiness into the lives of everyone they knew. They were funny, hard-working and caring people. Each precious life, so full of potential, of future successes and celebrations, torn away by your appalling violence. The statements of John and Amy Hunt also demonstrated great courage and determination that your terrible crimes will not define them or stop them leading the lives that Carol, Louise and Hannah Hunt would have wished for them. They showed a gentle heroism of which you, Carl Clifford, can only dream. I've already announced the ultimate sentence I will impose. I now need to set out the technical legal reasoning behind the sentences I have decided upon. To deal with lesser matters, I will impose concurrent terms of 1 year's imprisonment for counts 1 and 2, the possession of the crossbow and the possession of the knife. I choose those sentences on the basis of category A2 under the Sentencing Council guidelines, with the aggravation of their planned use and the threat the crossbow posed to police officers on the 10th of July. The only mitigation is your lack of previous convictions and, to a limited extent, your age. After a trial, the sentence would have been 15 months, but I deduct 20% for your guilty plea well before trial. The surcharge provisions apply and the order can be drawn up accordingly. I make the order for the deprivation of the items on the list uploaded onto the digital case system by the prosecution, including the crossbow, your laptop and phone. The proper sentence for rape is guided by the Sentencing Council. I find the rape of Louise Hunt to fall into the highest range of the top category 1A for the reasons identified by the prosecution. There is no element of double counting, as I have to impose a concurrent sentence given the nature of the sentence for the murders. I therefore take the upper end of the range of 19 years. There is mitigation in your lack of previous convictions, but serious aggravation in the planning of the crime. I will therefore pass a sentence of 20 years imprisonment for that offence. There are no Sentencing Council guidelines currently in force for the offence of false imprisonment, and the circumstances of that offence are so intertwined with the murders that it is hard to separate them. But in any event, it has to be concurrent with the life sentences, so double counting and totality are not issues. Louise Hunt's detention was prolonged, planned, in her own home, and it falls within the Sentencing Council definition of domestic abuse. For this offence, you are also entitled to a deduction for your guilty plea. I therefore pass a sentence after that 20% reduction of 8 years imprisonment. Guidance on the imposition of the mandatory life sentence custodial term is set out in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. A whole life order is normally to be imposed for the murder of 2 or more people where each murder involves a substantial degree of premeditation or planning. Such a disposal is a rare one and reserved for only the most extreme cases. I have considered the guidance of the Court of Appeal in the decisions of Stewart and others, of Kigundu and Osborne. I will not add to the length of these remarks by rehearsing what is set out with great clarity in those judgments, save to highlight 2 points. First, Schedule 21 must be applied in a flexible, not rigid way to achieve a just result. Second, that although paragraph 2.2 of that schedule may have had in mind 2 murders planned then committed on separate occasions, those provisions do not exclude the most severe order being made for multiple killings on the same day. I am satisfied so that I am sure that you both planned and contemplated killing all 3 of your victims. I've already mentioned your planning. You knew the routine and habits of that household. You clearly anticipated that Carol Hunt would be in the house as you went equipped to trick your way inside. You must have known Louise Hunt would be working in the building in the garden, as you knew her routine, and she was the obvious target to be raped and murdered. You knew the routines of the household. You were there for over 4 hours and must have anticipated that Hannah Hunt would return. While you had used Louise Hunt's phone to ensure John Hunt would not be home any time soon, you made no such inquiry about Hannah. You would have known she wore a uniform for work, which she would be bound to come home to change before doing anything else in the evening. I am sure that Hannah too was part of your premeditation and that you intended to murder her if the chance presented itself. Those findings alone could lead to the imposition of a whole life term, but there are 4 further very serious aggravating factors. First, the relevant section of the schedule is triggered by, quote, the murder of 2 or more persons, I stress or more. It seems to me the fact there were, quote, more, unquote, must be a relevant factor for a judge to have in mind. Otherwise, the courts would be saying the murder of 3 people added nothing to the sentence for the murder of 2, an unthinkable proposition. Second, the rape of Louise Hunt, of which the jury found you guilty last week, which offence was part of the same plan and the same course of conduct as the 3 killings. Third, these murders took place against a woman with whom you had been in an intimate relationship and her family, and so is within the Sentencing Council guidance on domestic abuse, which context makes crimes even more serious. Fourth, the murders of Louise and Hannah Hunt must have involved them becoming aware of the murders you had already committed, thereby inflicting dreadful mental suffering before death. a specified aggravating factor under the schedule. You have been referred to at times as a former soldier. In many cases, that would serve as significant mitigation. Not so in your case, however, as your 2 years in the army included 286 days at home claiming to be ill. You never saw active service, and your utility to the armed forces can be gleaned in a parting comment from your commanding officer that, quote, his character is wholly unsuited to military employment, and he has no care nor concern beyond himself, unquote. There are 3 matters of mitigation. First, your lack of previous convictions. Second, your relative youth, though you were already 26 years old by the time of these offences. Third, you pleaded guilty to the offences of murder, though not at the first opportunity. I have reflected on all 3 aspects. The Sentencing Council guidance makes clear there may be cases where a guilty plea should lead the court to draw back from imposing a whole life order. I have considered and rejected that course, as the factors in favour of such an order are so compelling that they far outweigh all those pieces of mitigation. I am left in no doubt that this is the sentence I must impose. The sentences I pass are therefore: for possession of an offensive weapon, the crossbow, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Carol Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not.
Open the windows. Open the door. All right, lads. Keep your hands where you can see them. Just keep your hands where you can see them, pal. Put you in some handcuffs. Yeah, one about that side. Just need driver out that side. Yeah, no bother. Just open the door for us, mate, until we confirm your identity. We'll put you in handcuffs. What's your name, fella? Eh? Joseph. Tom's just getting driver out, and then all 3 will be secure. Arrest on suspicion of murder. Okay. You don't have to say anything. I am in defence. You don't mention one question. Some people later rely in court, and anything you do say may be given evidence.
29-year-old Joseph Pierce and 41-year-old James Witham were arrested for the murder of 28-year-old Ashley Dale, 23 days after the incident on the Old Swan estate in Liverpool, United Kingdom. The investigation initially seemed challenging, but detectives from the Merseyside police acted swiftly to solve the case, preventing it from becoming Liverpool's latest unsolved murder. Despite living a comfortable life away from crime, Ashley Dale tragically had her door kicked in and faced a hitman's indiscriminate gunfire while watching TV with her dog. Let's delve into it. Let's take a deep dive into this case then and see how 2 best friends turned rivals caused the death of an innocent woman. To begin, we've got to head over to the Glastonbury Festival, a 5-day festival that some of the most famous artists have touched down to perform there. Roughly 200,000 people visit every year, and in 2022, 28-year-old council worker Ashley Dale attended as she had done many times before. That year, she headed down to the festival with her boyfriend Lee Harrison, a known Merseyside organized crime gang member. The pair were also with 2 friends, but only one is relevant to the story: Jordan Thompson, also an organized crime gang member. We'll call this group Group 1. Also in attendance was organized crime gang member Sean Zeiss and his girlfriend Olivia McDowell. Although the pair headed down to Glastonbury by themselves, they were both associated with Group 1, and throughout their time at the festival, they crossed paths with them. We'll call this pair Group 2. Ian Fitzgibbon, Olivia's cousin, and his girlfriend were also in attendance, and just like Group 2, they made their own way down to Glastonbury. Throughout their time at the festival, they crossed paths with Group 1 and 2. Then there's Group 4. This group consists of high-ranking organized crime gang member and arms dealer, Niall Barry, James Witham, and a few others that are irrelevant to the story. Niall had connections with everyone in the other groups except for Lee Harrison and Jordan Thompson. However, their friendship hadn't always been distant, especially in 2018 when they were considered best friends and partners in drug trafficking, until a significant theft occurred. Approximately 40,000 pounds worth of cocaine and cannabis vanished from Niall's stash house, allegedly orchestrated by the Hillsiders, a local criminal syndicate. Lee, believed to be associated with them, severed ties with Niall, possibly due to suspicions that Niall had been swindling him. This rift hinted at a looming retaliation, given Niall's prominence in the criminal landscape of Merseyside. After the robbery, years passed without any significant developments. Niall purportedly relocated to North Wales to manage a county line and engage in trading illegal firearms. Despite occasional encounters with Lee upon his return to Liverpool, no confrontation ensued. However, tensions escalated during Glastonbury 2022 when interactions between their respective groups reignited the feud. An altercation between Sean Zeiss and Jordan Thompson over Lee's involvement in the 2018 robbery sparked the conflict further, culminating in Sean's assault and subsequent fallout with his girlfriend, Olivia. The following day, she broke up with him and started a fling with Jordan Thompson at Glastonbury. Niall capitalized on the incident to confront Lee, marking a notable departure from their previous avoidance of conflict, possibly due to their shared social circles maintaining peace until then. After Sean's confrontation with Lee led to his assault, Niall's pursuit of vengeance intensified. Armed and determined, Niall sought out Lee at Glastonbury as recounted by Ian, a witness to their encounter. Despite Niall's threat of violence, no further altercations occurred between the parties involved. Sean, though aware of Olivia's presence with Group 1 post-assault, remained silent. Meanwhile, Lee remained unperturbed by Niall's armed pursuit, opting to enjoy the festival instead. However, on the fourth day, Niall and James Witham's plans were disrupted when they encountered police while en route to Glastonbury, though the reasons for their detour remain undisclosed.
Got on top there for him. We believe they might have drugs on you. We're in the vehicle, okay? So we're taking you for a search. I'm piecing up enough wrong for you, ropes to you, okay? So you want to the cars.
James has got £700 in cash on him, but that's below the threshold. Oh, hello, Mr. Niall.
Yeah, that'll do.
That'll come in. I think that was it, to be fair. Niall, time is 25:02, mate. You're going to be arrested under suspicion of possession of that, okay?
That's not my bag.
It's in your bag with your passport in it, okay?
Yeah, I've just said that to you before. My passport was in his bag.
So you don't have to say anything that may harm defence if you don't mention any questions. Think you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, alright?
That's not my bag.
It's got your passport in it.
Ask him, he grabbed all my stuff before. Ask him, he grabbed all my stuff before.
Is there just one bag? No, there's two bags.
My bag's the carrier bag, the white bag. With all the clothes in.
He did say straight away that his passport's going to be in his mate's bag.
I did say that, yeah, I did say that. Ask him,
Right. You're under arrest for now, okay?
Till we bottom it out.
It's your bag, is it? Say again? The big blue holder. Yeah. Okay. Say again? There's ketamine in there, is there? Whereabouts is it? You're saying there's some ketamine in the bag. something, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, his bag. The blue one.
That one? That's yours? Okay. Right, okay. So, I'm going to arrest you then, on suspicion of possession of this, okay? So you don't have to say anything but may harm your defence, you don't mention any questions, saying you're in court, okay? Anything you do say may be given evidence. Obviously, this is a lock knife, right? So you're under arrest for the possession of a bladed article. Where's the ketamine in here then? What? I've searched the bag and I can't find any ketamine. What was it in? It's your driving license in your bag.
Yeah.
So it's the other guy, the chap in the baseball cap, he's confirmed it's his bag. And the guy whose passport it was in it is denying it's his bag, saying it's his mate's bag.
Oh well, that's on tape, so.
Yeah. To be fair, I think as soon as, to be fair to Niall, the other bloke, as soon as he's been stopped, he sort of said, like, my passport's in that bag, but nothing else in there is mine.
Oh, okay.
And the other chap's like, yeah, that's my bag.
Oh, okay.
His passport's in it, so I didn't go the other one first because I thought it was his. But
Yeah, well,
he's got
a passport.
Yeah, he's got no, it's not mine. The other guy's got it.
With Glastonbury's conclusion, everyone dispersed to resume their routines, except for one individual profoundly affected by the events. The looming threats made during the festival cast a shadow of fear, particularly on Ashley Dale, whose anxiety intensified upon learning of Niall's pursuit of Lee. The constant reminder of potential danger, even if not directly targeting her, consumed her thoughts. Compounding her distress, Niall's direct communication with Lee, promising a visit to their shared home address, exacerbated Ashley's unease, leaving her unable to find solace in the aftermath of Glastonbury, as her texts prove. It's just giving me bad anxiety. I just feel like I'm constantly worrying and something's going to happen. He's being threatened by Niall and all like that. Is he going to end up doing something to Lee? I just couldn't cope with that. Niall is saying he's going to come and do something. He was saying he was going to come down and he never came down. I just think if he's going to do something, would he not give him any warning? ICBA with it. I don't want to have to go to Lee's funeral next, and I just have a bad feeling about everything MOL. Proper stressed out all the time, my nerves are gone. When I'm out in the car with Lee, just feeling like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time.
So I'm so sorry to report that over the course of the weekend at around midnight on the early hours of Sunday morning, police were called to Leinster Road, reported for shooting. At that location we found that the property had been forcefully entered, multiple shots had been fired, and a young lady who we now know to be Ashley Dale had been shot and fatally wounded. And unfortunately, despite the best efforts of Merseyside Police and the North West Ambulance Service, she succumbed to those injuries. We are supporting her family at this incredibly difficult time. Ashley was a lovely young woman with a career in front of her, worked for Knowsley Council and had recently graduated and had a promotion at work. She was in her own home and should have been safe at that time. The people responsible for this attack are subject to our investigation, and we need to do everything we can to identify who they are. They have no place in our society or our communities. They had no regard for Ashley or the law or the community, and I appeal to anyone with any information whatsoever or evidence around this to come forward, contact us directly, Crime Stoppers, or through our major incident portal on the website.
At 11:40 p.m. on August 20th, 2022, a grey Hyundai was captured on CCTV as it approached Ashley Dale's residence on Leinster Road in Liverpool's Old Swan neighbourhood. Upon arrival, two individuals disembarked and proceeded to slash the tyres of Ashley's white Volkswagen T-Roc. Their attempts to lure occupants outside were futile as no one responded. Inside, Ashley remained with her dog, attributing the disturbance to the rain-triggered alarm and refrained from investigating. Almost an hour later, the assailants returned, this time wielding a military-grade Scorpion machine pistol. Bursting into the living room, the gunman confronted Ashley, who fled towards the back garden via the kitchen. Despite her efforts to escape, she was struck once in the abdomen by gunfire. Her dog was also targeted, sustaining injuries. After discharging multiple rounds, the gunman retreated, leaving behind a scene of terror and devastation.
I've just heard a loud noise in the back. I've stood on my back wall and the house immediately to the back of us. There's a lady lying there in shorts and a t-shirt and she's groaning. She's lying in the backyard on her back. She looks like she's struggling.
Please, if there's anyone here, make yourself known!
Officers with taser.
Back door's open.
Is it?
Yeah.
Chris, you've got taser on to leave, mate. I'm gonna walk through. Unfortunately, I'm not my refresher.
Back door is open.
Okay.
Please.
Go shift the back. What's the report?
Is that last patrol on the road?
Upon police arrival, they encountered Ashley Dale's residence riddled with bullets. Amidst the chaos, officers discovered Ashley's traumatized dog, fortunately unharmed. However, Ashley herself was not as fortunate. Despite emergency efforts, her catastrophic injuries proved fatal. Consequently, a murder investigation commenced, initially posing challenges due to the historical reluctance of Liverpool locals to cooperate with law enforcement. Nevertheless, recent shifts in public cooperation facilitated progress in the case. Shortly after Ashley's death, informants implicated James Witham as the suspected gunman. Interestingly, Ashley wasn't the intended target. Her boyfriend, Lee Harrison, was. Lee's refusal to aid the investigation into his girlfriend's murder contrasted starkly with his reassurances to Ashley's family of his innocence in the matter. Despite Lee Harrison's reluctance to cooperate with the investigation, police found Ashley Dale's own communication devices to be instrumental in uncovering crucial evidence. Text messages and voice notes retrieved from her phone provided a timeline linking back to the 2018 drug robbery, establishing revenge as the motive behind her murder. According to police, James Witham and Joseph Pearce were dispatched to assassinate Lee on orders from Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss, seeking retribution for the robbery and the Glastonbury incident. With all four suspects identified, police moved to make arrests, encountering difficulty as all but Sean fled the area. Sean, apprehended a week later, initially denied involvement, but later expressed disgust at the events and asserted his innocence, opting not to evade authorities. Following the murder, Joseph Pearce and James Witham proceeded to the Mercure Hotel in St. Helens. They spent one night there, indulging in the spa facilities, before checking out on the morning of August 22, 2022. Their activities on the 22nd remain unclear, but in the early hours of the subsequent morning, they seemingly fled to Scotland, likely in an attempt to evade police pursuit. Law enforcement struggled to trace their movements during their time in Scotland. However, by September 13th, authorities received intelligence suggesting their return journey to Liverpool in an Audi Q7. This prompted their imminent arrest.
The door. Alright lads, keep your hands where you can see him. Just keep your hands where you can see him, pal. I'll put you in some handcuffs. Yeah, what about that side? Just need driver out that side. Yeah, no bother. Just open door for us, mate, until we confirm your identity. And we'll put you in handcuffs. What's your name, fella? Eh? Joseph. Tom's just getting driver out and all three will disappear. Arrest on suspicion of murder, okay? You don't have to say anything. I am a defence, you don't mention when questioned. Some people later on in court, and anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand?
Suspicion of murder. Suspicion of murder. Hello mate, how are you doing?
Just going to put you in cuffs, mate, alright. What's your name, fella?
Francis.
Say that again.
Francis Kelly.
Gary?
Francis.
Gary Francis?
Francis Kelly.
Francis Gary?
Francis Kelly.
Carrie?
Kelly.
Kelly, it's alright. Here's your... Right, we'll walk over here, fella. You got anything on you you shouldn't? No. Anything in the vehicle that you shouldn't be? Yeah, James? Right, okay, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder. Alright, you don't have to say anything. The May Army defence, you don't mention one question, so which will let in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Alright? Whatever time was now. Yeah. Well, we'll come over here, we'll sit behind my vehicle. It's confirmed that he is, James.
On August 24, 2022, 3 days post the murder, Niall packed his belongings and departed for the Formby Hall Golf and Spa Resort in Formby, situated approximately an hour away from the Huyton flat. All 4 men faced charges including murder in connection to Ashley Dale, conspiracy to murder Lee Harrison, and conspiracy to possess a prohibited weapon with intent to endanger life. Despite initial denials, they proceeded to trial. Just prior to the trial, James Witham admitted to being the gunman, but claimed it was manslaughter as he didn't intend to shoot Ashley. However, the prosecution rejected his plea, leading to a 7-week trial from October to November 2023. While the other defendants distanced themselves from the murder, James portrayed the shooting as reckless and unintended, expressing remorse for the harm caused. Joseph Pearce claimed no involvement in the incident, asserting he had no part in the events leading up to the shooting, including the Glastonbury altercation and the drug robbery. Sean Zeiss maintained he was at the Huyton flat watching sports and denied any motive for targeting Lee, citing Lee's intervention during the Glastonbury altercation as evidence of their amicable relationship. Niall insisted he was at the flat with others and denied any plan to harm Lee. Despite their defenses, the jury convicted all defendants on all charges.
At 11:40 p.m. on the 20th of August last year, a Hyundai car drove into Leinster Road in Old Swan, Liverpool. Inside were 2 men, James Witham and Joseph Pearce. They drove there as a result of a criminal agreement with Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss to kill the occupants of 40 Leinster Road using a Scorpion submachine gun. They each knew that Lee Harrison lived there with his partner, Ashley Dale. It was their home. The car had been acquired in the days leading up to what happened, with false number plates ready to use when the hiding of the car followed. In an attempt to bring the occupants out of the house, Witham and Pearce stabbed the car tyres of the car parked outside. That set off the car alarm. Inside the house was Ashley Dale in her pyjamas, watching television. When she heard the alarm, she believed it was caused by heavy rain, and so she stayed inside. Outside, Witham and Pearce waited for their moment for this planned killing. What followed was a murder of such seriousness that it has shocked both the local community and many in this country. The use of a military-grade submachine gun to kill a young woman in her own home at night in a planned shooting of the occupants of that house is beyond any understanding. At just after midnight, Witham got out of the Hyundai car, wearing a balaclava to hide his face. He carried that Scorpion submachine gun, loaded with 15 bullets. He broke through the locked front door, walked into the dining room. Ashley was in that room alone, moving towards the kitchen back door to escape, and there were lights on so that she was visible. Witham wickedly fired 10 bullets towards her as she was vulnerable and defenceless. One of those bullets passed through her abdomen and killed her. Her screams were heard by neighbours. Leaving her to die, Witham went upstairs looking for Lee Harrison. In a bedroom, he fired a further 5 bullets into the wall as a clear statement that if he had been in the house, he would have been killed also. After the shooting, Witham and Piers drove away. The car was parked elsewhere, out of view, and later that day to be hidden on the driveway of a property in St Helens. A week later, it was driven by Piers and Zeiss to be hidden on another driveway in St Helens, until it was discovered by the police on the 9th of October. Ashley Dale died very shortly after she was shot. Lee Harrison has refused to cooperate in the police investigation into her murder. So involved with criminal drug-dealing gangs is he. For the family of Ashley Dale, this must have been a cruel twist to the tragic loss of their daughter and sister. Not only was she brutally killed in her own home, but Lee Harrison has refused to assist the police to bring her killers to justice. Stand up. I sentence each of you to imprisonment for life on count 1 for the murder of Ashley Dale. Niall Barry, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2, 3, and in the second indictment. Your minimum term is 47 years, less 433 days served on remand. James Witham, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is also increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending on counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 43 years, less 295 days served on remand. Joseph Piers, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 33 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 41 years, less 295 days served on remand. Sean Zeiss, on count 1, murder. Your minimum term is increased to 32 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3 and the second indictment. Your minimum term is 42 years, less 448 days served on remand. On count 2, conspiracy to murder, I impose a concurrent sentence of imprisonment for life on each of you, with a minimum term of 18 years custody. On count 3, conspiracy to possess a prohibited firearm and ammunition with intent to endanger life, I impose a concurrent sentence of 14 years imprisonment on each of you. The sentences on the second indictment of 30 years imprisonment for you, Barry, and 10 years for you, Zeiss, will also be served concurrently. You will each be required to pay the statutory charge, but in your cases, Zeiss and Barry, I postpone the making of the order until the conclusion of the confiscation proceedings under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. In your cases, Piers and Witham, I make the surcharge order now, which will be in the appropriate amount and set out in the court order. Take them down.
Ian Fitzgibbon faced trial on the same charges but was acquitted, expressing jubilation at the courtroom verdict, likely due to his close relationship with Ashley and Lee. During the trial, he emphasized his friendship with Lee and indicated he wouldn't partake in a plot against a close friend. That is it for today's video. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.
Lynda Spence, a 27-year-old financial advisor in Glasgow, once epitomized ambition and charm. Outwardly, she managed a thriving mortgage and property business, catering to clients with dreams of luxury and security. Her polished image, marked by visits to upscale hotels, the clink of champagne glasses and stylish cars, belied a life steeped in financial chaos. Overwhelmed by mounting debts and desperate to sustain her glamorous lifestyle, Lynda resorted to deceptive methods. She accepted large deposits from hopeful investors, manipulated documents with alarming ease, and operated under multiple aliases to hide her true financial state. To friends and business partners, she was seen as an entrepreneurial star. Behind closed doors, however, her dealings were rife with fraud and reckless mismanagement that would eventually lead to her undoing. Lynda's ambitions soon pushed her deeper into the murky realm of high-stakes fraud. One particularly audacious scheme promised a staggering return. A mere £85,000 investment was touted to yield a £3.2 million windfall, structured around counterfeit Danish bonds designed to evade taxation. This venture, with its irresistible promise of wealth, lured not only unsuspecting investors, but also dangerous elements from Glasgow's underworld. Among her questionable contacts were individuals with alleged ties to drug trafficking and money laundering, and even an Albanian criminal known as Sokal Zafaj. In a twist that further blurred moral lines, Lynda also agreed to act as an informant for the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency, complicating her existence by intertwining legitimate business with covert criminal intrigue. This double life intensified her vulnerability, setting the stage for a catastrophic collision of interests. Amidst her dubious schemes and mounting pressures, Lynda's path crossed with two men whose lives were about to darken irreversibly. Through a mutual associate, Tony Kelly, she was introduced to Colin Coates and Philip Wade, two figures whose turbulent pasts and bitter resentments would soon converge in a deadly act of retribution. Colin Coates, once a promising computer expert in aviation and investment banking, had seen his bright career dimmed by substance abuse and a violent temper. His fall from grace had led him into the realm of organized crime, where his bitterness and thirst for vengeance festered. In contrast, Philip Wade carried the sting of personal financial loss, having trusted Lynda with funds meant for his family during a period of incarceration. Wade's deep-seated resentment soon evolved into a desire for revenge. Together, Coates and Wade saw Lynda not merely as a fraudster, but as an obstacle whose ill-gotten gains needed to be reclaimed by any means necessary. Their alliance, founded on mutual greed and personal vendettas, would ultimately bring about a tragic and irreversible turning point. By early 2011, the noose tightened around Lynda. Mounting pressures from creditors, intensifying law enforcement scrutiny, and demands from her criminal partners left her exposed and desperate. On a grim day in April, Coates and Wade intercepted her on the streets of Glasgow. With no room for negotiation, and in the absence of any witnesses, they forcibly ushered her into a waiting van, a moment that sealed her fate. The journey from the familiar cityscape to the remote environs of West Kilbride was both abrupt and chilling. Lynda was transported to a nondescript flat where the true horror awaited her. In the attic room of the flat, an atmosphere of foreboding had been meticulously crafted. The space was isolated and stripped of any warmth, transformed into a bleak holding cell. There, Lynda was bound to a leather chair with surgical tape, her arms and waist securely immobilized. Two additional men were posted as guards to ensure she could neither escape nor call for help, turning the room into an oppressive prison that would soon become the stage for her unspeakable torment. For 13 excruciating days, the attic morphed into a chamber of relentless brutality. Every day, Coates and Wade returned with a torture kit containing garden loppers, surgical tape, and even a golf club. Their objective was brutally clear: to force Lynda into revealing the financial secrets behind her fraudulent schemes through physical and psychological domination. The methods they employed were deliberately vicious. Lynda was burned with a hot iron, leaving scars that would serve as lasting reminders of her agony. She endured repeated beatings with the golf club and other implements, and in a series of horrific acts, her captors severed her fingers and crushed her toes. Each brutal act was designed to diminish her spirit and break her will, ensuring that she remained silent. The torture was compounded by the fact that Lynda was forced to remain bound to the chair throughout her captivity. Denied even the most basic human dignity, she was made to relieve herself in the very space where she suffered, a constant and degrading reminder of her helplessness. Adding to her isolation, Coates manipulated her personal communications. Using her mobile and email accounts, he sent misleading messages to her family, fabricating an illusion of safety and normalcy, even as she languished in relentless pain. This added cruelty deepened her isolation, intensifying the despair that accompanied every moment of her ordeal. After 13 days of ceaseless torment, the captors resolved that Lynda's silence had become intolerable. Around April 28, 2011, they reached a chilling decision to end her suffering once and for all. Testimonies from those involved suggest that Colin Coates led the final act of cruelty, reportedly executing Lynda in a manner so brutal that he severed her head before disposing of her remains, in a calculated effort to thwart detection. The method of disposal was executed with meticulous care, ensuring that Lynda Spence's body would remain unrecovered, thus deepening the mystery and horror surrounding her tragic demise. Lynda's sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through her family and the wider community. Her parents, Patricia and Jim, reported her missing on May 13th, launching an urgent search for answers that quickly turned into a desperate quest for truth. As public appeals were broadcast, investigators began to unravel the chilling trail left behind in that isolated attic. Forensic evidence, including traces of blood, fingerprints, and digital data recovered from her phone, combined with brave testimonies from guards who later cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced sentences. These accounts, despite the absence of Lynda's physical remains, provided irrefutable evidence of the systematic torture and the network of criminals responsible for her abduction and murder. The case eventually reached Glasgow's High Court, where the full extent of the atrocity was laid bare over a rigorous 46-day trial. In February 2013, the jury delivered a verdict that sent ripples of shock through the community. Colin Coates and Philip Wade were found guilty of orchestrating the abduction, prolonged torture, and murder of Lynda Spence. Coates was sentenced to life imprisonment with a mandatory minimum term of 33 years before any possibility of parole, while Wade received a minimum term of 30 years. Lesser accomplices involved in the crime also faced significant prison terms. The severity of these sentences underscored the court's determination to hold the perpetrators accountable for their unspeakable actions. Though the verdict brought legal closure, the emotional and social scars left by Lynda's fate continue to haunt the community. Her case stands as a somber testament to the destructive power of unchecked greed and brutality. In the wake of the trial, Lynda Spence's case ignited widespread debate over vulnerability, exploitation, and the urgent need for enhanced oversight in both financial practices and criminal networks. Community leaders, advocacy groups, and policymakers called for reforms designed to protect individuals from predatory schemes and violent retribution. The tragedy underscored the stark reality that a life built on deception and the lure of easy money can quickly unravel, leaving irreversible damage to families and society as a whole. Her story emerged as a powerful cautionary tale, a reminder that even those who project success and glamour may be entangled in dangerous, self-destructive paths. Years after the trial, the legacy of Lynda Spence remains a subject of painful reflection and intense debate. To some, she symbolizes the perils of living a double life, caught between the glittering allure of wealth and the dangerous entanglements of criminality. Others view her primarily as a tragic victim, ensnared by circumstances that spiraled out of control despite her own missteps. Her fate serves as a lasting lesson about the high cost of deception and the inevitable clash between criminal ambition and the uncompromising demands of justice. The Lynda Spence case endures as one of Scotland's most disturbing criminal episodes, a narrative where ambition, fraud, and relentless brutality converged with devastating consequences. While legal justice was ultimately served, the prolonged torture continued to haunt those left behind. Her story stands as a powerful call to vigilance, urging society to confront the forces of greed and violence head-on so that such dark chapters in human history are never repeated. Mark Nash, a name synonymous with brutal murder and criminal infamy in Ireland, became one of the country's most notorious figures for his involvement in a series of horrifying killings. His story spans years of shocking crimes, flawed investigations, and the eventual pursuit of justice, all tied to the dark underbelly of Ireland's criminal landscape. From a troubled youth to a convicted serial killer, Nash's life story reveals a pattern of escalating violence, legal missteps, and a legacy that continues to echo through the Irish criminal justice system. Mark Nash was born in 1972 in Dublin, Ireland, into a working-class family. While little is known about the specifics of his childhood, it is apparent that his formative years were far from ideal. Growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Dublin during the 1980s and 1990s, Nash's early life was marked by the socio-political turmoil of Ireland's recent history, including the violence and unrest caused by the Troubles. It is believed that, like many individuals caught in this environment, Nash's development was significantly influenced by the harsh surroundings in which he was raised. By his teenage years, Nash began to develop a reputation as a troublemaker, frequently engaging in petty criminal activities. His first run-ins with the law were minor offenses, but these early experiences would become the foundation for his later, far more violent criminal endeavors. The lack of a strong familial or societal support structure likely contributed to Nash's eventual immersion into a world of serious crime. As he grew older, Nash's offenses became more severe. The violent tendencies that would later characterize his criminal career began to surface, and his lifestyle veered further away from any potential for redemption. His lack of meaningful relationships, his disregard for authority, and his inner demons began to shape the man who would soon become one of Ireland's most infamous criminals. In March 1997, Mark Nash's life took a horrific turn, marking the beginning of a string of brutal murders that would ultimately define his legacy. On that fateful day, Nash brutally murdered two women, Sylvia Shields, aged 46, and Mary Callanan, aged 56, in Grange Gorman, Dublin. The crime was gruesome, with both victims stabbed multiple times, their bodies severely mutilated. It was clear that these murders were not random. They were targeted, methodical, and marked by extreme violence. The discovery of the bodies sent shockwaves through the local community. Police were immediately drawn into a complex and frustrating investigation. Despite the brutal nature of the crime, there were no immediate leads or suspects, and the police struggled to find any forensic evidence that could point them toward the killer. The case quickly became one of the most high-profile unsolved murders in Ireland at the time, sparking public concern and intense media attention. For years, the Grange Gorman murders remained unsolved. The victims' families and the public were left in limbo, as the lack of a breakthrough in the case left many questioning the ability of law enforcement to bring the killer to justice. However, unknown to them, the true identity of the murderer was closer than anyone could have imagined. In August 1997, just 5 months after the murders in Grange Gorman, Mark Nash's bloodlust took him to Ballintober, County Roscommon. Here, Nash killed Carl Doyle, a man in his mid-30s, and his wife, Catherine Doyle. The crimes mirrored the brutality of the Grange Gorman killings, with both victims stabbed repeatedly. This new double murder bore the hallmarks of Nash's violent nature, and it quickly raised suspicions that the crimes in Roscommon were connected to the previous murders in Dublin. The police, still reeling from their lack of success in solving the Grange Gorman murders, were left to grapple with yet another brutal double homicide. Nash's involvement in the Roscommon killings seemed like a clear pattern of escalating violence, but as with the Grange Gorman case, the investigation faced major roadblocks. Police were unable to gather enough evidence to make an arrest, and Nash, like the killer before him, was able to slip through the cracks of law enforcement. As he left more victims in his wake, Nash's sense of invincibility grew. It seemed as if he could commit these heinous crimes without facing any consequences. evading capture despite his increasingly reckless behavior. For years, the investigation into both the Grange Gorman and Roscommon murders appeared to stall, leading law enforcement to focus on other leads. One of these leads involved a young man named Dean Lyons. In 1999, Lyons was arrested and charged with the Grange Gorman murders, largely based on circumstantial evidence. This arrest was the result of a rushed and flawed investigation that overlooked important forensic details. Dean Lyons spent several years in prison, maintaining his innocence throughout. However, it wasn't until the use of advanced DNA technology in 2001 that a breakthrough in the case occurred. The DNA evidence linked Nash to the Grange Gorman murders, leading to Lyons' exoneration and Nash's eventual arrest. While the wrongful conviction of Dean Lyons was a tragic miscarriage of justice, it also provided the key breakthrough in solving the Grange Gorman murders, as the true killer was finally identified. This case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of rushing to judgment and the importance of thorough and unbiased investigations. Dean Lyons' wrongful conviction sparked outrage and renewed calls for reform in the Irish criminal justice system. After years of investigation and legal battles, Mark Nash was finally arrested and charged with the Grange Gorman and Roscommon murders. In 2015, after an extensive trial, Nash was convicted of the two murders that had haunted Dublin and Roscommon for nearly 2 decades. The jury's verdict was seen as a long-awaited moment of justice for the families of the victims and the public who had waited so long for answers. The conviction came after a difficult trial, during which Nash attempted to claim his innocence, despite the overwhelming forensic evidence against him. The DNA match, which had been instrumental in linking him to the Grange Gorman murders, was irrefutable, and Nash's defense arguments were ultimately dismissed. Mark Nash was sentenced to life imprisonment for the two murders. His conviction was a major victory for law enforcement, marking the end of one of Ireland's most chilling criminal cases. However, Nash's journey through the criminal justice system was far from over. In 2018, Mark Nash appealed his conviction, challenging the fairness of his trial. His legal team argued that the publicity surrounding the case, coupled with the delay in bringing him to trial, had compromised his right to a fair hearing. They contended that the media coverage had influenced public perception and potentially swayed the jury's decision. Despite these arguments, the Court of Appeal upheld Nash's conviction, affirming the jury's unanimous verdict. The court concluded that Nash's rights had not been violated, and the original conviction stood. This ruling was seen as a victory for justice, and it further cemented Nash's status as a convicted serial killer. As of 2025, Mark Nash remains incarcerated at the Midlands Prison in Portlaoise, Ireland, where he continues to serve his life sentence. His case, especially the wrongful conviction of Dean Lyons, continues to attract attention from the media and legal scholars. The controversy surrounding his conviction and the issues related to the mishandling of the investigation into his crimes remain subjects of public discourse. In addition to his continued imprisonment, Nash has also been involved in legal battles concerning his prison conditions and eligibility for parole. Despite his life sentence, Nash's legal team has occasionally filed appeals and motions for early release, though these efforts have so far been unsuccessful. Mark Nash's story is one that is rife with tragedy, controversy, and unanswered questions. His brutal murders shocked Ireland and left lasting scars on the victims' families and the communities affected by his crimes. The case has sparked significant debate about the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, the challenges of convicting serial killers, and the impact of wrongful convictions on innocent individuals. Nash's life, which began in troubled circumstances, was ultimately defined by violence and criminality. Yet his story is also a reflection of broader societal issues. including the failures of the justice system and the need for continued reform. As Mark Nash's life sentence continues, his legacy remains a painful reminder of the atrocities he committed and the long, difficult path to justice that was required to hold him accountable. The lessons learned from his case continue to influence the way Ireland and the wider world approach criminal investigations and the search for truth in the pursuit of justice. Mark Nash's life story serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the complexities of criminal investigations, the repercussions of systemic failures, and the relentless pursuit of justice. From his troubled beginnings to his rise as a violent serial killer, Nash's actions left a permanent mark on Ireland's criminal history. Despite his conviction, the case continues to raise questions about the workings of the justice system and the lasting impact of violence on individuals and communities. As his story unfolds, it serves as a reminder of the enduring need for vigilance, fairness, and accountability in the fight against crime.
Oakdean Down sits on the rolling outskirts of Barony, its gently curving streets lined with neat hedges, manicured lawns, and the occasional horse paddock. On the morning of August 29, 2016, the sun rose as it always did, soft golden light filtering through birch leaves, the call of magpies drifting on the breeze. Yet behind the thick hedges of the Hawe family home, something was terribly amiss. Retired teacher Mary Call had arranged for her daughter, Clodagh Hawe, to drop off her two youngest grandchildren, Niall, 11, and Ryan, 6, before midday. When no one answered Mary's calls or texts, she felt a prickle of unease. Pulling on a light jacket, she climbed into her car and began the familiar 5-minute drive down Oakdean Lane. As she turned into the Hawe driveway, Mary noted both family cars parked silently under the carport. The heavy curtains hung unmoved across the sitting room windows. Even the bedroom drapes were drawn. Clodagh, a vibrant primary school teacher at O'Ristown National School, never shirked sunlight or fresh air. Alarmed, Mary retrieved her spare key from beneath a flower pot and slipped it into the kitchen door's lock. Inside, the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of a clock were the only sounds. Then Mary saw the note, white A4 paper scrawled in her son-in-law, Alan Hawe's unmistakable handwriting. "Do not enter. Call the guards immediately." Mary's heart thudded. Alan was a deputy principal at Castlereagh National School, a respected educator with a calm demeanor. Why would he bar her entry? She dialed 999 at exactly 10:40 a.m., her voice trembling as she told the operator, "I think, please hurry. Something's happened to my daughter and my grandchildren." Moments later, she dashed across the hedge to her neighbor, Edith Harrigan, breathless and shaking. "Alan's done something terrible," she whispered. Edith wrapped her in an embrace as blue lights bounced across the lane. Within minutes, Garda Alan Ratcliffe arrived, calm but urgent. Mary handed over the key. He steeled himself for what lay inside. Garda Ratcliffe stepped into a tableau of horror. In the sitting room, Clodagh lay prone on a floral couch, still clad in pastel pajamas, her head grotesquely swollen and dark with blood. On the carpet lay an axe, its metal head streaked with crimson, and a kitchen knife, both tools of unspeakable violence. In the hallway lay Alan Hawe, his uniform trousers and shirt rumpled, a small pistol by his side. He had died by his own hand. A quick check confirmed no other occupants had fled. The house was sealed in its deadly silence. Ratcliffe ascended the stairwell with grim resolve. To his left, in two adjoining rooms, lay Liam, 13, and Niall, 11. Both boys lay on their beds, their throats slashed with clinical precision. Gina, the school nurse at Castlereagh, later testified that such wounds were unlikely to be inflicted in panic. They spoke of deliberate intent. At the top of the stairs, Ratcliffe found 6-year-old Ryan on a tiny mattress, clutching a faded Star Wars blanket. A small carving knife rested on his pillow, its blade clean save for a thin smear of blood. Ryan's body showed evidence of repeated sawing motions. his injuries crueler, more prolonged than those of his brothers. Downstairs, Ratcliffe emerged pale-faced to break the news to Mary and Edith. 5 lives snuffed out, no survivors. Mary wept openly. Edith placed a steady hand on her shoulder. The place where children once chased each other among toys now lay hushed, sealed under sheets of plastic. Forensic technicians combed every surface, taking swabs, photographs, and meticulous notes, evidence against a man who had claimed responsibility in blood. On the kitchen table, detectives found a sealed envelope and loose pages, some splattered with blood. Inside, Alan Hawe's handwriting curled across white paper. All the good things we did, I was really into it, but I think some psychosis made me enjoy the violence. Then I was the complete opposite. I'm sorry for how I murdered them all. I simply had no other way. Investigators concluded Alan wrote the first half immediately after killing Clodagh, then paused, sealed it, and continued writing after disposing of his sons. Forensic analysts lifted Alan's right palm print from the blood-soaked axe handle. They estimated the time of death for Clodagh at roughly 2:15 a.m., Liam and Niall at 2:45 a.m., Ryan at 3 a.m. Alan transferred 2,500 euros from the family's joint bank account into his personal account, money he perhaps intended to leave for funeral expenses or to seed a final act of control from beyond the grave. Detective Sergeant Bridneem Haile, skilled in behavioral profiling, noted the methodical sequence: wife first, then eldest son to silence resistance, youngest last. Alan arranged the weapons carefully, knife on pillow, axe beside couch, symbols of his twisted order. To neighbors and colleagues, Alan Hawe had been the model of stability. Originally from Wingap, County Kilkenny, he rose through the ranks to become deputy principal. He coached under-12s Gaelic football on weekends and volunteered for parish concerts. Clodagh hailed from Mount Nugent, County Cavan, and was known for her warm smile and dedication to literacy programs. Yet in early 2016, Alan's flawless facade cracked. School IT logs revealed visits to pornography sites on his work laptop, 97% of his traffic, discovered by an internal audit. The incident was hushed away. No public scandal erupted. Behind closed doors, Clodagh confided to Mary that Alan had sought counseling for a pornography addiction. He attended weekly therapy sessions with counselor David McConnell from March through June 2016. Counseling notes, later submitted at the coroner's court, revealed chronic insomnia, a sense of failure to maintain his image, and shame over imperfections. He spoke of run-down health and even resorted to treating a toenail fungus with bleach. His general practitioner prescribed sleeping pills but detected no overt signs of depression. No psychiatrist warned of homicidal or suicidal ideation. Mary recalled that winter, Alan seemed distracted, Clodagh more withdrawn, but their public roles, teacher, principal, demanded composure. The community, unaware of their private torment, continued to praise the fantastic family. Word of the Hawe family massacre ripped through Barony like wildfire. Candlelight vigils were held at Castle Rayhan National School, where pupils laid flowers at a makeshift memorial. Parents wept openly at soccer pitches. Church congregations prayed for the lost angels. A special mass was said for Clodagh and her sons at St. Michael's, where the priest spoke of darkness hidden behind human kindness. Local media dubbed Alan Hawe the most normal man you could meet, showing photos of him laughing at school fairs. Women's rights groups decried the sympathetic coverage, arguing that portraying Alan primarily as a troubled educator obscured the cold brutality of his crimes. Advocates called for better mental health screening in schools and more transparent communication from guards to victims' families. Meanwhile, Mary and Clodagh's sister, Jacqueline Call, fought for access to Alan's counseling records and the witness statements guards had collected. They discovered an anonymous tipster had spotted Alan driving the family car near the school at 6:30 a.m., hours before bodies were found. The witness gave a detailed statement, but it was not released to the family until 2018. On December 19, 2017, the coroner's court in Cavan convened to hear testimony and expert reports. Professor Harry Kennedy, a forensic psychiatrist, reviewed Alan's GP notes, counseling records, and suicide letter. Without meeting Alan in person, he concluded that Alan suffered from a long-term depressive disorder, compounded by somatic preoccupations and escalating guilt. By August 2016, these symptoms had metamorphosed into a psychotic episode, hallucinations not documented but implied by voices in the letter. Alan had expressed fears of burdening his family. "I cannot let them face a life without me, and the shame of my suicide. I have wanted to kill myself for a long time now." Professor Kennedy emphasized that severe mental illness can distort judgment to the point where murder-suicide seems to the sufferer a twisted form of mercy or redemption. After brief jury deliberation, just 10 minutes, the verdict was returned. Alan's death was self-inflicted, and the homicides were confirmed. The inquest recommended increased funding for mental health interventions and protocols for monitoring behavioral changes in school staff. Despite the inquest's findings, Mary and Jacqueline confronted new battles. They faced over €50,000 in legal fees fighting for document release under Ireland's Succession Act of 1965, which stalled reforms. They lobbied the Irish government and worked with women's rights groups to push for faster access to evidence in cases of domestic violence and family tragedy. In July 2019, Oristown National School unveiled the Clodagh Hawe Memorial Hall, a community gathering space dedicated to her passion for reading and learning. Plaques bearing the names of Clodagh, Liam, Niall, and Ryan hang in the lobby, a permanent reminder that behind statistics and hearing rooms lie real lives and shattered dreams. The Hawe family murders remain among the most harrowing in modern Irish history, a calculated spree carried out by a father and husband whose kindly reputation masked a profound inner torment. Their story underscores the importance of vigilance, recognizing that mental health struggles can lurk unseen, and of compassion for victims' families caught in the wake of violence. Oakdean Downs, once serene, still bears the imprint of that August morning. Neighbors speak in hushed tones. Children avoid the empty house at the top of the lane. But the Clodagh Hawe Memorial Hall buzzes with life, school plays, literacy workshops, and summer camps. There, the community honors the vivacious teacher and her children, transforming tragedy into a beacon of shared resilience. In remembering Clodagh, Liam, Niall, and Ryan, we confront the fragility of the facade each of us presents. We acknowledge that love can coexist with despair, that a life of service can end in brutal betrayal, and that our best response is not fear, but action, supporting mental health care, standing by those in crisis, and ensuring that every good family's shadows can be brought into the light.
Gardaí and Ballymun continue to keep an open mind in relation to who was responsible for the brutal murder of mother of two, Lisa Thompson. The 52-year-old's body was found a week ago today at 3:30 in the afternoon at her home in Sandyhill Gardens, where she lived alone. She sustained multiple stab wounds, and officers believe she was dead for some time before her remains were discovered after a neighbour who was concerned alerted emergency services.
Lisa Thompson was born into a small, close-knit family. Growing up in a quiet neighborhood, she quickly became known for her infectious smile and caring nature. Lisa was always there for others, whether it was a friendly chat over coffee or offering a helping hand when someone was in need. However, beneath her bright exterior, Lisa faced her own set of challenges. Her parents, though loving, struggled with personal issues that sometimes made them unavailable to her. From a young age, Lisa took on the responsibility of looking out for her younger siblings. This early maturity shaped her into a determined and strong-willed woman, traits that she carried into adulthood. As Lisa grew older, she began to face the complexities of relationships. Her first serious relationship ended painfully, and over the years, she would experience the ups and downs of love, loss, and rebuilding her life. Despite these struggles, Lisa remained focused on her children, her greatest source of joy and purpose. She was a mother of 2, and her love for them was immeasurable. Her children were the reason she pushed through the difficulties, hoping to provide them with a stable and loving home. But, like many people, Lisa's life was far from perfect. She had been involved in a volatile relationship with a man named Brian, which would eventually lead to her tragic death. Lisa met Brian several years before her death. From the outside, their relationship seemed like many others, complicated, yes, but manageable. However, as time passed, it became clear that there were cracks in their relationship. Brian had a history of aggressive behavior, and Lisa, though always fiercely independent, found herself drawn into a cycle of tension and conflict. Despite her family's concerns, Lisa seemed to be in denial about the toxic nature of their relationship. They would often break up, only to reconcile soon after. Family and friends witnessed the instability in the relationship, but Lisa remained hopeful that things could improve. In the months leading up to her death, Lisa began to withdraw from those closest to her. Her social media posts became more cryptic, and she became increasingly isolated. Those who tried to reach out to her were met with either silence or vague responses. Behind closed doors, the relationship between Lisa and Brian became even more strained. Lisa's family noticed that she was increasingly unhappy, but they had no idea just how dangerous things had become. The night of Lisa's death began like many others. She and Brian were at her home, and the two had been spending time together. The specifics of the evening's events remain unclear, but it is known that a violent confrontation took place between the two. Neighbors later reported hearing raised voices, but no one could have predicted what would unfold next. In the quiet of her own home, Lisa Thompson was murdered. The details of Lisa's death were horrific. She had been beaten and assaulted in her own house, a place that was supposed to be her sanctuary. Brian, in a fit of rage, took her life, leaving her children without their mother and her family devastated. The violence was brutal, and the crime scene was a stark contrast to the gentle woman that Lisa had been. It wasn't until the following morning that Lisa's family began to worry when they couldn't reach her. Her children were supposed to have been with their father that weekend, but Lisa's absence was alarming. The family began calling her phone, and when there was no answer, they went to her home. Upon arrival, the door was found slightly ajar, and Lisa's family entered the house, only to be met with the shocking reality of her murder. Lisa's body was found in the living room, the violence of her death still apparent in the aftermath. Her family immediately called the police, who responded quickly to secure the scene. Authorities launched an immediate investigation, but the circumstances surrounding Lisa's death left them with few clues. At first, it was believed that Lisa might have had a break-in or an intruder, but the investigation soon revealed a different story. Brian was quickly brought in for questioning. Initially, he denied any involvement in her death, but as the investigation progressed, inconsistencies in his story began to emerge. The police discovered that Brian had a criminal history and that his behavior on the night of Lisa's death was inconsistent with his claims. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that Lisa's murder had not been a random act of violence. Brian's background, combined with his sudden disappearance after the incident, raised further suspicions. He was arrested and charged with Lisa Thompson's murder. The investigation revealed that Lisa had suffered extensive injuries. The cause of death was blunt force trauma, and it was believed that the attack had occurred in a violent rage. Lisa's family was heartbroken, learning more about the brutality of the act that ended her life. Witnesses came forward, confirming that Lisa had been involved in a turbulent relationship with Brian. Some neighbors recalled hearing shouting and arguing the night before her death. Additionally, forensics revealed that the crime had been committed in a highly violent and personal manner. This was no random act. As Brian was questioned further, he changed his story multiple times. He initially claimed that he had been with Lisa that night, but left after an argument, denying any responsibility for her death. But as the evidence mounted against him, his story began to unravel. Months later, the trial of Brian for the murder of Lisa Thompson began. The prosecution laid out a compelling case against him, presenting evidence of his violent tendencies and the details of the brutal murder. The courtroom was filled with tension as Lisa's family and the public watched the proceedings unfold. Lisa's mother, siblings, and children sat through the trial, enduring the painful process of reliving the details of her death. The prosecution argued that Brian had murdered Lisa in a fit of rage, knowing full well the consequences of his actions. They presented forensic evidence that pointed to the fact that the attack had been deliberate and carried out with extreme violence. Brian's defense tried to paint a different picture, claiming that Lisa had been a willing participant in the confrontation. They suggested that there had been a struggle, but their argument lacked the weight of the evidence. As the trial progressed, Lisa's family made victim impact statements, speaking out about the profound loss they had experienced. Her children spoke about how their lives had been forever changed and how they missed their mother terribly. After a long and emotionally draining trial, the jury deliberated and returned a verdict: guilty of murder. Brian was convicted of Lisa Thompson's murder and sentenced to life in prison. For Lisa's family, the conviction provided some sense of justice, but it did little to ease the overwhelming grief they felt. Lisa's children would grow up without their mother, and her family would never again be the same. The sentencing was a bittersweet moment, as the reality of Lisa's death continued to weigh heavily on everyone involved. Lisa's family took solace in the fact that Brian would never be able to harm anyone else again, but it was clear that no verdict could undo the damage done by her tragic murder. In the wake of Lisa's death, the community was rocked by the violence that had taken place in their midst. Neighbors, friends, and acquaintances who had known Lisa all spoke about the person she had been: loving, kind, and devoted to her family. Lisa's death became a stark reminder of the dangers that many people face behind closed doors in abusive relationships. The crime shook the community, and her family vowed to honor her memory by speaking out against domestic violence. Lisa's story was shared in various forums, raising awareness about the signs of abusive relationships and the importance of support systems for those who are struggling. While Lisa's life was cut tragically short, her death sparked important conversations about the hidden dangers of domestic abuse. Though Lisa's life was taken too soon, her legacy lives on through her children and the love she gave to those around her. Her family continues to advocate for those affected by domestic violence, ensuring that Lisa's story will never be forgotten. Her children, who are now growing up without their mother, find strength in the memories of her love and resilience. Her story has become a symbol of the need to support those in toxic relationships and to never ignore the warning signs of abuse. The tragic death of Lisa Thompson was a horrific reminder of the brutality that can occur in abusive relationships. Her murder left a lasting impact on her family, the community, and those who followed the case. Although no punishment could bring Lisa back, her story became a catalyst for change, highlighting the importance of speaking out against domestic violence and ensuring that her life and legacy would continue to inspire others.
Police emergency.
Someone's just threw a big concrete slab through my back window and ran off.
Try and get up there as soon as, if there's a possibility, he's still knocking about.
Alright then, thanks very much.
Okay.
I'll be waiting.
Mark Dale Cregan was born on 6 June 1983 in Droylsden, Greater Manchester, to Paul and Anita Cregan. He grew up sandwiched between an older brother and a younger sister in a modest, semi-detached home. Like many working-class families in late 20th century northern England, the Cregans felt the squeeze of deindustrialization. Foundries and mills had given way to estates and service jobs, and opportunities for young people were limited. School reports described Dale as bright but easily distracted. His teachers noted an undercurrent of aggression that belied his gentle family life. By age 16, fallen in with a circle of local boys known to police for petty theft and low-level drug dealing. He began selling cannabis around Little Moss High School. Not large quantities, but enough to earn a reputation as someone who got things done. The rush of easy cash, combined with a thirst for respect among his peers, proved intoxicating. Far from steering him back on track, his brief stints in school disciplinary meetings cemented a growing sense of alienation. After leaving school with few qualifications, Cregan took a low-paid plasterer's apprenticeship before jumping at an opportunity abroad. In his late teens, he spent 18 months in Tenerife, ostensibly working as a tradesman. In reality, he and associates ran a classic holidaymaker ripoff, targeting frail pensioners with too-good-to-be-true timeshares. Witness statements from Kiyosaka's bars recall his smooth talk, free rounds of drinks, and the horror of broken promises once families returned home. During this period, locals whispered about his penchant for threats and the glint of a weapon if someone resisted. By 2005, Cregan was back in Greater Manchester, his pockets lined with illicit profits. He invested in a small arsenal, handguns, and a shotgun, learning to fire and modify weapons in derelict warehouses. Soon, he graduated from cannabis to cocaine, running a tight distribution network through pubs and nightclubs. Police intelligence estimated his weekly turnover at £15,000 to £20,000, enough to finance luxury holidays, high-performance cars, steroids for his gym regimen, and flashy jewelry. Greater Manchester in the late 2000s was no stranger to gang violence. Territorial disputes, drug turf wars, and historic family feuds simmered beneath the city's working-class veneer. The Atkinsons of Audenshaw, Droylsden's Roughs, and the Short family of Clayton each held sway in their local patch. These groups fought not only over money, but for respect and face in a subculture that prized ruthlessness. The Shorts were led by David Short, a charismatic but volatile figure known as much for his charitable donations in East Manchester as for his suspected involvement in assaults and firearms offenses. His son, Mark Short, born in 1989, was a talented amateur boxer with a young family. Mark's ambitions, however, put him squarely in his father's underworld orbit. In May 2012, a minor pub scuffle lit the fuse. Teresa Atkinson, grandmother of the Atkinson clan, hurled a bottle of wicked at Short's associate in the Cotton Tree Inn. An insult quickly escalated into a slap, and word traveled fast through Manchester's back streets. The Shorts had been humiliated. In their world, such slights demanded retribution. On 25 May 2012, Cregan, by then allied with Anthony Wilkinson, tracked Mark Short to the Cotton Tree Inn in Droylsden. Concealed under black clothing and ski masks, they burst in around 11 p.m. Witnesses described the chilling calm with which Cregan produced a 9mm Glock, took aim, and fired, striking Mark in the neck and killing him instantly. 3 bystanders were wounded in the ensuing panic. Shock rippled through Droylsden. Local police launched a shooting in a public house investigation, the rare use of homicide detectives in a district normally policing burglaries and minor assaults. CCTV and mobile phone footage proved crucial. Fleeting images of a masked gunman and a getaway car linked to Cregan. Yet, despite an arrest within days, Cregan walked free on bail, protected by an alibi and a tight-lipped code of silence among witnesses. Thousands lined the streets for Mark's funeral. His widow, Sarah, gave a harrowing eulogy. As her 3-year-old daughter watched, she spoke of "my daddy who fought the bullies and called for peace." Yet already, whispers of retaliation echoed in the crowd. David Short publicly vowed vengeance for his son's death. He was known to carry a pistol, and rumors flew that he planned to ambush Cregan. On 10th of August 2012, Cregan and Wilkinson reversed the tables. Early evening, David returned home to Clayton after visiting Mark's grave. Waiting in a hired van, Cregan opened fire through the front passenger window, over a dozen shots. David fled toward an ally's house, but both men chased him into a narrow alley. There, Cregan ended his life with a final bullet, then tossed a grenade at his prone body, leaving gruesome fragmentation injuries. British tabloids exploded with headlines: "One-Eyed Fury," "Revenge Gunman," "Killer on the Run." The Home Office offered a £50,000 reward. Yet Cregan stayed hidden, moving between safe houses in Liverpool, Sheffield, and rural Wales, evading over 40 police raids. On 18th of September 2012, an anonymous caller tipped 999 that a burglary was underway at 30 Abbey Gardens, Mottram in Longdendale. The tip included a fabricated CCTV claim: "They've just chucked a concrete slab through the window." This would lure two probationer officers, PC Nicola Hughes, 23, and PC Fiona Bone, 32, into the trap. At 9:10 a.m., police control classified the call as Priority 1, immediate threat. Hughes and Bone drove in a marked van, joined by an experienced sergeant trailing behind. On reaching the cul-de-sac, the sergeant was ordered to stay back, to station the van and await backup. The two women advanced on foot. At 9:24 a.m., Cregan fired 32 shots from a suppressed Glock, striking Hughes in the spine and Bone through the window. Hughes collapsed on the garden path. Bone fell inside the living room. Both tried to defend themselves. Bone deployed her taser, which failed to disable him. Cregan then reloaded and delivered final shots. Finally, he lobbed a fragmentation grenade onto their bodies. Minutes later, Cregan strolled to Hyde Police Station, weapon discarded, and announced, "I'm the one who killed 2 coppers. Put me away." He offered no remorse, only a cold apology for having targeted girls. Cregan appeared at Ashton-under-Lyne Magistrates Court on 21 September 2012, remanded in custody. He faced 4 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and multiple firearms and explosives charges. The trial opened on 4th of February 2013 before Mr. Justice Openshaw. Over 30 days of witness testimony and graphic photographic evidence left little doubt of guilt. On 12th of February, Cregan pleaded guilty to the murders of Hughes and Bone. On 22nd in May, he also admitted killing David and Mark Short. Defense experts claimed Cregan's violent outbursts followed a traumatic brain injury sustained in Thailand, when he lost his eye in a tavern brawl. They argued for diminished responsibility. The prosecution rebutted, citing his meticulous planning and financial motives. On 13th June 2013, Cregan received a whole life tariff, meaning no possibility of parole. The judge condemned his callous calculation and unprecedented ferocity. A vibrant 23-year-old who joined Greater Manchester Police 6 months earlier, Nicola had dreamed of helping vulnerable people. At her funeral, colleagues spoke of her sunny optimism and never-give-up spirit. Fiona, 32, served in the Metropolitan Police before transferring north. A mother of 2 young boys, she was praised for her dedication to community engagement and youth outreach. Her final act, broadly publicized, was believed to have saved several children from domestic abuse days before her death. Their memorial service brought hundreds to Clayton Cemetery. Friends recalled Mark's promise as a boxer and devoted dad, and David's generosity to local charities despite his criminal ties. The ambush forced a nationwide review of how unarmed officers respond to calls. New protocols were introduced for verifying suspect premises and dispatching armed backup on high-risk jobs, balancing community trust with officer safety. Cregan's use of a homemade grenade spurred calls for tougher controls on explosive precursors. Subsequent Home Office regulations added penalties for improvised explosive device manufacture. Fiona Gardens in Droylsden, a housing project named in PC Bone's honor, with annual charity football matches raising funds for Police Care UK. Nicola Hughes Fund, a scholarship for aspiring female officers, supporting leadership training and mental well-being resources. Although Anthony Wilkinson was jailed for assisting Cregan, investigators still seek clarity on a wider network, how he acquired large quantities of weapons, and whether any serving officer turned a blind eye. Cregan's cold-blooded shoots and post-crime bravado raise unsettling questions about the impact of steroid abuse, head trauma, and the desensitizing effect of chronic violence. Academic studies now cite his case in discussions of psychopathy and recidivism. In Droylsden and Clayton, neighborhood watch schemes have flourished in the years since 2012. Youth outreach programs recall Fiona Bone's work, steering at-risk teens away from the very path Cregan took. The Dale Cregan case stands as a harrowing chapter in British criminal history, a stark lesson in how one individual's descent into violence can shatter families, upend communities, and challenge institutions. While the full cycle of grief and recovery is ongoing, the legacies of PC Nicola Hughes, PC Fiona Bone, Mark Short, and David Short endure. In policy reforms, safeguarding frontline officers, in scholarships and memorials, nurturing new generations of public servants, in community programs fostering solidarity where once fear reigned, their stories remind us that, even in the darkest moments, courage and compassion light the way forward, and that every life lost spurs vigilance, reform, and the hope that such tragedies will never be repeated. That is it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think of today's video, and I will see you next time.